These are 8 anime worlds where your chances of survival are so astronomically low that even the protagonists barely make it out alive. From worlds where 90% of humanity gets wiped out in a single day, to realms where simply trying to leave will literally kill you, these fictional universes prove that sometimes the most compelling stories come from the most horrifying places imaginable. Let's start with what might be the most famous death trap in all of anime, the world of Attack on Titan. When Hajime Isayama created this nightmare in 2009, he didn't just craft a story about giant monsters eating people, he built a mathematical equation for human extinction. By the series' end, a staggering 80% of humanity gets wiped out. Think about that for a second. If we estimate the world population at around 2 billion people, which matches the time period when Attack on Titan is set, that means roughly 1.6 billion people died to save fewer than 1.6 million survivors on Paradise Island. The death toll starts early and never stops climbing. In just the second episode, we learn that 250,000 people died in a single failed operation to reclaim Wall Maria. The manga explicitly states this represents 20% of the population within the walls. Do the math and you'll realize there were only 1.25 million people before that operation, dropping to 1 million afterward. When humanity's safe haven holds barely 1 million souls and you can lose a quarter of them in one military disaster, survival becomes a statistical improbability rather than a reasonable expectation. The Titans themselves aren't even the worst part. Living behind those walls means accepting a lifetime of psychological torment. Every day you wake up knowing that massive, mindless giants want to eat you alive, and the only thing standing between you and that fate are some very tall walls that have already been breached before. The Survey Corps, humanity's best hope, has a survival rate so low that joining them is essentially volunteering for death. And if the regular Titans don't get you, there's always the looming threat of the Rumbling, where hundreds of colossal Titans march across the earth, literally flattening everything in their path. Now, if you think watching your friends get eaten by giants sounds bad, let me introduce you to Seraph of the End, where survival starts with a virus that specifically targets anyone old enough to have developed critical thinking skills. In 2012, a man-made virus reduced the world's population by 90%, killing almost everyone over the age of 13. The virus was engineered to spare only children, leaving a world populated entirely by kids who have no idea how to run civilization. Here's where it gets truly twisted. The children who survived the virus weren't saved by luck. They were spared because vampires needed livestock. Think about the psychological horror of this setup. You're a kid who just watched every adult you've ever known die from a mysterious disease, and then these beautiful, immortal beings show up to explain that you're going to be their food source for the rest of your very short life. The vampires don't even pretend to care about human dignity. They keep children alive purely to harvest their blood, treating them like cattle in a supernatural slaughterhouse. Even if you somehow manage to escape vampire captivity, you'd be a child trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic world where 90% of all human knowledge and infrastructure just vanished along with every adult who knew how to maintain it. No teachers, no doctors, no engineers, no parents. Just you, a handful of other traumatized kids, and a world full of vampires who see you as dinner. Speaking of treating children like livestock, the Promised Neverland takes that concept and transforms it into a horrifying allegory for industrial farming. The children in this world aren't just being raised to die, they're being scientifically optimized for maximum taste quality. Every child gets a number tattooed on their neck, identifying them as premium grade meat for wealthy demons. The premium farms, which have operated for hundreds of years, represent the absolute pinnacle of this grotesque system. Only 4 premium farms exist in the entire world, designed specifically to produce the highest quality meat for demon nobility. These aren't mass production facilities, they're boutique operations where every detail gets carefully controlled to maximize the final product's value. The children receive excellent education and nutrition not out of kindness, but because intelligence and health directly correlate to taste quality. You're literally being fattened up while being taught to love your captors. The systematic nature of this horror becomes clear when you realize the scope. While there are hundreds of factory farms producing cheap meat for ordinary demon civilians, the premium farms focus entirely on creating delicacies. Children get shipped out between ages 6 and 12, meaning even if you figure out what's happening, you have at most 6 years to plan an escape from a facility designed by creatures far more intelligent and powerful than any human child. The tragic fate of the 19 children who escaped Glory Bell Farm in 2033 perfectly illustrates how hopeless resistance really is. Despite successfully breaking out, none of them survived. Most died when they reached Goldie Pond following a clue from William Minerva that turned out to be a trap. Even when children manage the impossible task of escaping these farms, the outside world offers nothing but different flavors of death. What if I told you there's a world where the act of trying to leave will kill you in increasingly creative ways? Welcome to Made in Abyss, where a massive pit, roughly 1,000 meters in diameter and at least 20,000 meters deep, creates its own supernatural punishment system for anyone foolish enough to attempt ascent. The Curse of the Abyss isn't just a neat story gimmick, it's a perfectly calibrated torture device that scales its cruelty based on how far down you've dared to venture. The first layer seems almost manageable. Ascend from depths up to 1,350 meters and you'll experience light dizziness and nausea. Annoying, sure, but survivable. Drop down to the second layer, reaching 2,600 meters deep, and ascending brings headaches, heavy nausea, and numbness in your limbs. Still awful, but you might live through it if you're tough enough. The third layer, extending to 7,000 meters, introduces vertigo and hallucinations that affect both sight and hearing. Now we're entering serious psychological torture territory. Your own senses become unreliable, meaning you can't trust what you see or hear while trying to navigate back to safety. The fourth layer, reaching 12,000 meters down, brings intense full-body pain, severe nausea, and both external and internal bleeding. At this point, the curse isn't just making you uncomfortable, it's actively trying to kill you. Here's where things get truly nightmarish. The fifth layer and beyond introduce confusion and self-harm associated with complete loss of all sensations. The curse begins stripping away your ability to feel anything while simultaneously driving you to hurt yourself. And if you somehow push deeper into the sixth layer and below, you face either the complete loss of your humanity or outright death. The genius horror of this system lies in its inevitability. Every delver knows exactly what awaits them if they ascend too quickly, but the abyss is filled with treasures and mysteries that make the risk seem worthwhile. You're constantly making calculated gambles with your life, knowing that each meter deeper makes your eventual return more likely to kill or transform you into something inhuman. The abyss also appears to have some form of time distortion, meaning you might spend what feels like days or weeks down there, only to discover that months or years have passed on the surface. This temporal manipulation adds another layer of existential horror to an already impossible survival situation. Let's talk about Berserk, a world so relentlessly hostile that it's become the gold standard for grimdark fantasy. Kentaro Miura created a medieval hellscape where demons walk freely among humans, and the very fabric of reality seems designed to crush hope. With over 70 million copies in circulation worldwide, Berserk has proven that audiences have an appetite for stories where survival requires sacrificing pieces of your soul. The eclipse represents perhaps the most traumatic event in all of anime and manga. It's the moment when the series transitions from grim medieval fantasy into pure supernatural horror. During this event, Griffith accepts an offer to become a member of the God Hand, a group of demon lords, and marks everyone he's ever led with the brand of sacrifice. This brand doesn't just identify you as a target, it actively attracts demonic entities for the rest of your life. Living with the brand means never experiencing a moment of true safety. Apostles, humans who have transformed into demons by sacrificing what they love most, hunt branded individuals relentlessly. These aren't mindless monsters, they're former humans who chose to become demons, meaning they understand human psychology and can anticipate your strategies. You're being hunted by creatures that combine human intelligence with supernatural power and an intimate knowledge of how to break the human spirit. The world of Berserk operates on a principle of cosmic injustice. Good people suffer and die while evil thrives. The very structure of reality seems designed to reward cruelty and punish compassion. Even if you manage to survive the physical threats, the psychological toll of living in such a world would eventually break most people's sanity. Guts, the series' protagonist, serves as a perfect example of what survival costs in this world. He's incredibly strong, highly skilled, and absolutely determined to keep fighting, but look at what he's endured. He's watched friends die horribly, been betrayed by someone he trusted completely, and carries literal and metaphorical scars from battles that would have killed anyone else. His survival comes at the cost of almost everything that makes life worth living. Let's shift gears to more modern horror with Jujutsu Kaisen, where the very emotions and fears of ordinary people create monsters that hunt those same people. The Shibuya incident perfectly demonstrates how quickly this world can spiral from manageable danger into absolute catastrophe. On October 31, 2018, what started as a coordinated attack to seal Satoru Gojo turned into an urban nightmare that lasted 58 chapters worth of continuous horror. During this single incident, at least 33 unnamed people died when Ryomen Sukuna hit Shibuya with a fire arrow. That's just the confirmed deaths from one attack by one entity during one night of chaos. The true death toll from the Shibuya incident extends far beyond what we see directly, as the event fundamentally changed how Jujutsu society operates and revealed the existence of cursed spirits to the general public. The terrifying thing about the Jujutsu Kaisen world is how it feeds on itself. Human negative emotions create cursed spirits, which then terrorize humans, generating more negative emotions that create stronger cursed spirits. It's a perpetual escalation machine that ensures the threats will always grow more powerful as long as humans continue to exist. Even if every current cursed spirit were somehow eliminated, more would immediately begin forming from the trauma and fear generated by the elimination process itself. Ordinary people have essentially no defense against cursed spirits. Most can't even see them, meaning they're being stalked and potentially killed by invisible monsters they have no way of detecting or understanding. The Jujutsu sorcerers who can fight these threats are incredibly rare, and many of them are either too weak to handle serious threats or too unstable to be trusted with the responsibility of protecting others. For our final destination, let's visit Devilman Crybaby, where the very concept of survival becomes meaningless because the entire world ends. Not just human civilization, not just most of humanity, but literally everything. This isn't a post-apocalyptic world where survivors can rebuild. It's a complete extinction event that resets reality itself. The progression toward total annihilation follows a horrifyingly logical path. First, demons reveal themselves to the world, which seems manageable until you realize that paranoia and fear are exactly what demons need to grow stronger. Humans begin turning on each other, unable to distinguish between demons and their neighbors. This mass hysteria spreads to governments and militaries worldwide, leading to the deployment of nuclear weapons against civilian populations. The riots and violence aren't just random chaos, they represent the complete breakdown of every social structure that makes human civilization possible. When people can no longer trust that their family members, friends, or leaders are actually human, cooperation becomes impossible. Society doesn't just collapse, it actively turns inward and destroys itself with methodical efficiency. As humans, demons, and the hybrid Devilman obliterate each other, the Earth becomes a devastated wasteland. But even this isn't the end. In the final moments, God bombards the planet, leaving it as a molten ball before allowing it to cool and regenerate. If you stick around after the credits, you'll see the Earth reformed with blue oceans and green continents, but with an extra moon, suggesting this cycle of creation and destruction has happened before and will happen again. The fundamental horror of Devilman Crybaby isn't just that everyone dies, it's that the entire struggle was meaningless. Every character who fought for survival, every moment of hope or love or determination gets erased and reset. Even Satan, who orchestrated much of the destruction, ends up reminiscing with Akira's corpse, unaware that his only real connection to humanity has already died. What makes these anime worlds particularly terrifying isn't just their individual threats, but how they systematically eliminate every possible avenue for hope. Attack on Titan traps you behind walls with mathematical inevitability working against survival. Seraph of the End removes all adult guidance and knowledge while making you livestock. The Promised Neverland turns love and education into tools of manipulation. Made in Abyss makes exploration literally impossible. Berserk corrupts the very concept of heroism. Jujutsu Kaisen turns human emotion into weapons against humanity. And Devilman Crybaby reveals that even total victory would ultimately be meaningless. These worlds work as horror not just because bad things happen, but because they're designed to make survival mathematically, physically, or philosophically impossible. They represent our deepest fears about powerlessness, betrayal, and the meaninglessness of suffering taken to their logical extremes. The creators of these worlds understand something fundamental about horror. The most frightening scenarios aren't just dangerous, they're inescapable. Whether you're facing 50-meter giants, blood-drinking vampires, child-eating demons, reality-warping curses, soul-hunting apostles, emotion-feeding spirits, or cosmic extinction events, the real terror comes from recognizing that no amount of courage, intelligence, or determination would be enough to guarantee survival. These anime worlds remain compelling precisely because they're impossible to survive. They allow us to experience the thrill of ultimate danger from the safety of our screens, to explore scenarios where heroism and hope get tested beyond all reasonable limits. In our comfortable reality, we can appreciate the mathematical precision of their cruelty and the creative ways they eliminate hope while remaining thankful that we'll never have to test our own survival instincts against such perfectly crafted nightmare scenarios.